Welcome to Beyond the Call, the podcast for all law enforcement professionals and all those who support them. Sponsored by the National Police Credit Union. We mean police business. I'm your co-host, Ken Bator, with co-host Casey Smith. Casey, how are you?
I am doing wonderful. I'm finally back in Arizona.
We've got to give a big, warm welcome to our guest today, who is Kim O'Neill of Kim O'Neill Coaching, who is a former crime analyst for the Long Beach Police Department. So that will be really interesting to hear about. Kim, welcome to the show.
Welcome.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here, Ken and Casey. Thank you so much.
Oh, we're glad to have you. Well, let's jump right into it, because I know some of our audience are former law enforcement or current law enforcement looking to, possibly start a new career or even go on an entrepreneur front. But let's talk about crime analyst first. You were a crime analyst for the Long Beach Police Department for over 3 years. Tell us about that job and what a typical day was like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that job, it was very interesting. It's very much like putting together a puzzle. That's how I look at it. You're looking at all the different information that's available and then really trying to be both proactive in preventing future crimes, but then also be able to solve, existing ones and put those, pieces together and find the suspect and catch them and all that kind of thing. So yeah, a typical day as a crime analyst, I don't know if this is going to sound as exciting as you're looking for, Ken, but typical day. There are definitely some key things you did every day. So at the beginning of every day, you want to check to see what happened last night.
Yeah.
But before I actually get into what a typical day in the life of a crime analyst is like, I first need to just acknowledge, not all agencies even utilize or hire analysts.
Huh.
And then, and then those that do, they're not always working on the same types of work or utilized in the same way. And some analysts might be sworn officers on maybe a temporary assignment or, possibly long-term. Others are civilian analysts, and I was a civilian analyst. So, yeah. Okay. So with that said, we do so much, and a lot of it boils down to reading crime reports every single day and then researching and analyzing what we've read. So, looking at all the information that's available and then saying, okay, what can we do with this? It's not enough to just say, okay, a crime happened on such and such street at such and such time. How can you make that useful for you? Well, let's see, we had a similar crime, the night before on the same street or, down the block or, maybe 2 blocks away at a different time of day, there was similar, not quite the same crime, but, similar suspect description.
Right.
And so you're looking for those patterns and those trends. How can you link things together? So I hope that sums it up, but it's, we do so much. We work with patrol officers and the detectives. So we have both this, preventive role in preventing future crimes, working with all the trends and being able to tell patrol officers, hey, be in this area, or this is what you're looking for, in terms of maybe a suspect description or types of vehicles that keep getting broken into,
Sure.
or things like that. And then you're working on the other side of it, the investigative side, as an extension of detectives and being able to look at information, either add to what they've already looked at because, they're so focused on maybe one crime or one type of crime, and maybe we can paint a broader picture by sharing with them, well, hey, this and this is also going on that maybe they hadn't been privy to because they're so focused on their one, the types of crimes that they solve. Or they're also spread thin with, the interviews that they're going out and doing and having to file paperwork, at the courthouse and all that stuff. So we get to be an added tool for researching, databases and, just other resources of information that they haven't even had time to look into. So we support them in those ways.
Sure.
And so that's like the bulk of it. The bulk of it is right there, gathering all that information and putting it together and then deciphering, what am I really looking at and what is useful to share with others. then after that is, I found this fun, but creating things like criminal information bulletins, which for anyone who's watching who's not familiar with law enforcement, those are basically like your wanted type posters.
Yeah.
So I enjoyed.
Did I ever wind up on any of those? And speaking to our audience who might not be familiar with Long Beach because they hear beach and they think, oh, it's just this beautiful place. It's a 500,000 person population in Los Angeles County. And except for a few neighborhoods, fortunately, one that I live in, it's a pretty rough area.
It's pretty diverse too.
Yeah.
It's interesting. There actually are, very well-to-do areas and then very not well-to-do areas. So there, you run the gamut and who you can run into in Long Beach.
Yeah, broad spectrum.
Yeah.
So you later found Kim O'Neill Coaching. Tell us a little bit about that and what motivated you to become an entrepreneur and run your own business.
Well, in many ways, for many years, even before I was ever a crime analyst, had been moving in that direction. Just have always been a fan of personal development type work and wanting to support and serve others and help them move forward in their life, attain their goals, heal, all things involved in personal development. So that was something that I was moving towards even while I was a crime analyst and just sort of doing it on the side for a while there. And finally just got to that place where I realized, okay, look, I want to do so much more than I'm able to, as long as I'm going to be devoting 40 plus hours of a week of my time to something else, then that's taking away from how I can serve in a bigger way through the coaching, speaking, and those kinds of things that I do. So it really came to, I've got to make a decision and I've got to go one way or the other. So that's what it came down to for me. But I had always had an interest in doing more of that. Yeah.
I love it. That's awesome.
Sure. What are some of the skills and experiences that you learned in working with first responders in working for the city of Long Beach that you use in your business today?
Well,
that's a really good question. So there's a lot rolled up into that. So
Kim, don't let him pick on you. He's the worst.
I love Ken's sense of humor. So no, I love it. I love it. Bring it on, Ken.
All right, I'll behave. I'll behave.
I would say first and foremost is I'm a naturally very inquisitive person. So that was a huge asset to me being a crime analyst, but also involved in coaching. I mean, coaching is all about, what are the questions that we're not asking? And let's sift through what's going on so we can find the solutions. We can unveil the solutions that are waiting to be discovered. And so that's something that I believe I naturally brought to both, being a crime analyst, but also to my coaching. But then taking it a step further, as I was on this journey towards doing more personal development work while I was also a crime analyst on, doing the work on the side. And I didn't anticipate this, but my journey did end up leading me down more of a, I say today that I combine both the practical and the metaphysical. So my journey started bringing me to this space of like understanding my own emotions on a deeper level. And I mean, you can imagine reading crime reports all day. That's a lot of negative information.
Right.
And it really is. It's just, so that was a lot. Well, it seems like one thing to do that and, okay, it's fine. You're reading it and you can not be affected by it. But as I was in this process of learning about my own emotions, what that required was also learning how to get unstuck, learning how to, process emotions that I never processed from the past. So a lot of times we may go through something that's traumatic or painful, just as being human, living life, right? And to some degree, we may start to put up a wall so that, okay, we can't be hurt again. and we close ourselves off, and that serves a purpose because it helps keep us protected and we get to move forward in life and, ward things off. But are we warding them off in a healthy way, or are we warding them off in a way where we're actually walling ourselves in? So I'm just trying to paint the picture of what I was in the process of doing. I was in the process of breaking down those walls so that I could be more receptive to other things in my life. And that required processing things that maybe I hadn't processed in the past. So as I'm doing this work and kind of like, clearing out the stuff from the past, I'm also at the same time taking in all this negative information that I'm reading 10 plus hours a day. There were some days I was there, no joke, 14 plus hours a day.
Sure.
And just, it's a lot. So the mix of those two things happening at the same time created a real struggle and challenge for me. So one of the biggest things that I learned in that job, which is not inherent from that job, but I have to share it because this was a huge part of it for me, was about learning how to manage my internal energy and being more aware of my emotions. And so again, not from the sense of, I'm all over the place and don't know how to manage things, just from an internal sense, so that I can continue to be grounded and centered and focused and do what I need to do and not be screwing myself up internally in the process. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Makes plenty of sense.
That was it.
Yeah.
Good. I'm glad to hear that, because I don't think that's what people anticipate when you ask a crime analyst, well, what did you learn? How are you doing it today?
Right.
Learn how to process my emotions. How about that?
Well, everybody has a journey, whether it's through a career or through law enforcement or through entrepreneurship. And Casey and I have seen that on a number of different levels. You mentioned walling yourself off. I wall myself off not because I'm in trouble, just because I'm antisocial. So we do things for different reasons.
Exactly.
That's why I do
you
a
like
podcast.
How you right. So Kim, I understand that you do a lot of great things with the youth. In fact, nearly a decade of experience of volunteering with the youth. Can you tell us a little bit about that and what you're doing in that area now?
Absolutely. And that was also another way of, this desire I had to really want to be able to work with, work with people one-on-one and serve in that way. And so for a long time, my heart was always drawn towards working with youth in some capacity. And for so long, I didn't really know how to get started. And I finally decided, okay, I'm going to do that thing they say to do when you don't know how to get started, and I'm going to volunteer. So that was one of the things I started. Oh, but actually, let me back up a little bit. Yeah, even before that, I did for a while work with special needs students. It was just a one-year job, but I worked with special needs students in schools and did some behavior intervention therapy, and that was really awesome. We all communicate in different ways, and we can all understand each other if we just take time to pause and say, okay, I may not, here's where I'm going with this. One of the students that I was paired up with, I remember when I first got paired up with her, I thought, oh my goodness, how is this going to work? I feel I'm very communication oriented, and I was paired up with a girl who was not able to speak. And she communicated with a computerized talker. There are different terms for that, but she did use one of those, but she didn't like to use it with me. And then she also knew some sign language, and that was good because I actually did know some myself. So we were able to use that. But that was another experience where I really got to just get quiet and just like connect with the person. Yeah. I know I'm kind of going off on a little tangent, but in some ways it was just such a cool experience.
We got plenty of time. You tangent away.
It was such a cool experience because I really thought, oh my goodness, I'm so communication oriented and this person isn't able to speak. How are we going to communicate? And I learned you don't need words. I mean, we all know this anyway, but it was really, I got to put it to the test. we communicate with more than just our words. It's our, our body language, our nonverbal communication. And I seriously think that on some level we started, ESP.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it was pretty cool. But and we also use sign language and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway, so I had that job, and then I've been a volunteer youth mentor with a fantastic organization in Long Beach for about 7 years now. It's called Operation Jumpstart, and they support under-resourced youth in the range of middle school through high school, and helping them to essentially prepare for college. And so I've been doing that for about 7 years and really enjoying it. I've got 2 senior mentees right now, seniors in high school, and it's just been a fantastic experience, really.
Yeah. So you said you've been there 7 years. Have you gotten an opportunity to hear success stories from some of the former students that have already gone to college?
That's a great story. Yeah. In fact, some of the staff at OJS, Operation Jumpstart, they actually were once mentees, and now they work there.
Nice.
Yeah, they now have master's degrees. Some have gone on, some are still working there. Yeah, it's been really cool to see.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love it. It's, even with that organization, you get paired up with, they do these personality tests, and they pair you up with students who are going to have a similar personality, or at least, they aim for that. And it's never just that one student that you can be a mentor for. So there are, lots of group activities and different outings we all do. And of course, one-on-one things you do with your own mentee.
Right.
But it was really cool just having those moments where we're doing group activities, or even let's say there's a group activity and my mentee can't go, but if I personally can still go, then it's still good to show up and be there for the others. And like those experiences that I've had with some of those other kids that I wasn't assigned to, but we were able to connect, and I was able to maybe support them with something they're dealing with. It's just so rewarding. It's, it's more of a gift for the mentor than the mentee.
Right. No, I agree. It's great.
Yeah, you mentioned communicating via ESP. Casey and I do that all the time. She sends me a message that I'm an idiot, and I usually say, yeah, pretty much.
But you own it,
right?
But I own
he owns
it. Yes, I own all of my vices and all my bad habits. But to switch gears just a little bit, doing some research, I found that you co-authored a book about overcoming adversity. Can you share an experience with us, or a story of your work with law enforcement that may be an example of overcoming adversity?
Ooh, what's the name of that book, by the way?
Yeah.
Oh, thank you for asking. And thank you for bringing that up, by the way. So it's actually right here.
She's prepared.
Look at that.
Since you mentioned it, Ken.
Shameless plug.
What was that?
It's a shameless plug. I love it.
Shameless plug. This just came out in November 2017, and I'm one of 9 co-authors on it. It became an Amazon bestseller.
Nice.
It's called, that was really awesome. So it's called Positive Minded People, Inspiring Stories of Overcoming Adversity for Living a More Positive Life. And so it's one of those anthology type books where we all wrote a chapter of some form of adversity in our life. My chapter, let me just put that back. My chapter is called Intuition, Can You Hear Me Now? Okay. And it's so good. Wow, you're just bringing me back to that moment. It was such a good experience. It was such a good experience writing that chapter, because it's like once you get something out of you, you can release it. I mean, it's just kind of another reason why it's good to process our emotions anyway. But so my chapter was about, it starts off where I talk about a breakup that I went through and how challenging and hard that really was for me, but how underneath the surface, it wasn't about that. It was about trauma from a lot earlier in my life that I never really acknowledged. And so I share that story in the book, and that actually dealt with my dad, and just absent father and things like that, which I've since moved through and forgiven and all of that kind of stuff. But when it comes to the workplace, Ken, that is also a really good question. So check for Ken again.
I'm doing something right today. All right.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think my answer is going to be what you anticipate, but I've got a few different things I can share on that.
Those are the best answers.
Okay, drum roll. First and foremost, there we go. Thank you. And the answer is, so, okay, this applies to everywhere, so I have to preface that, but also, when I was working at the police department, office politics. Office politics. Yeah. So everything I talked about earlier about, learning how to manage my own internal energy and be aware of my emotions and those kinds of things, that really helped me to be able to be less affected by office politics. Doesn't mean it stopped, right? I can't control other people and make them do things, but I was able to be less affected by what's going on around. So
that's huge.
Yeah.
Office politics can be draining for anyone in any industry. It's a lot, but it's always there. So you got to handle it somehow.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, to me, I think that it's very empowering knowing that we can actually do our own work to be less affected by it. That doesn't mean saying, that person's awful. I don't want anything to do with them. I mean, that might be the case. And maybe part of the awareness is, okay, steer clear of someone. That might be part of it. But it's not about victimizing yourself and saying like, oh my gosh, like all this awful stuff is happening and, they're awful and, I'm affected by it. It's about what can I do about this? So, I can continue to be a strong, empowered person while this is going on. Mm-hmm. So that's one of my adversity, things that came out of working from there. Yeah. Is that anything you were you anticipating, Ken?
No. I mean, people don't realize, whether you're working for a corporation or a police department or the city or what have you, you're still having interactions with other people. In my work with police officers, which frankly is not at the level of yours, Kim, or Casey's, but just in the work that I've done with police credit unions, you think that it's all a fraternity, and at the end of the day, it truly is. But then you hear about these stories about, well, we don't like these cops over here because they do this. We don't like this department in this city because they're not as professional as us. I'm like, what? Aren't we supposed to all get along? So, when you hear things like that, it reminds you that, even though, you're working maybe in a police department or on a police force, regardless of the position, that there's still the same office politics and issues with culture that you would have anyplace else.
Right. Absolutely. Even in, say, a family. I mean, they are very, even though there's office politics, they are also in many ways very close knit.
Sure.
Yes.
And consider themselves, a family. But let's think about that. Are all families blissful?
Not even close.
Yeah, right? Exactly. So,
no comment.
No comment. Good answer.
Yeah. Some of us are lucky to have a great group of family members. Others, not so much.
Exactly. And
unfortunately,
it's just dynamics that you learn to work with. And it's challenging. I mean, I won't say that like that was not easy for me. Yeah. I mean, that was like a journey. That was a process. And there was a good chunk of time where I didn't realize like what's going on and how can I work with this? How can I move beyond this? How can I do what I need to do while this, other stuff might be going on?
Right.
That, that took some time getting there, but but it was nice to finally get there. Another thing that comes to mind when I think about adversity is, and again, this is also somewhat universal, but this was a really cool experience that happened on my very last day that I was even there. here I am, this, crime analyst, 40 plus hours a week, also doing, life coaching, spiritual energy work on the side, and finding it being somewhat scary to share that side of myself with the people that I work with. And I don't believe that you necessarily, there's absolutely something to be said for keeping your work and your personal life separate. I completely agree and believe in that. However, I was also kind of feeling this pull to share this other part of me at work. And yet at the same time, I was really scared to do that, thinking, oh my gosh, are they going to totally think that I'm crazy and go, what is our crime analyst doing? Think that I'm crazy, or, so really kind of like feeling this pull, but also going, I could so freaking like serve them in another way. Right. I always felt so, I don't want to say bad, but I guess that's kind of just the easy way to say it. I just felt bad for the police officers, going out in the field. And when they would come back with stories of, citizens who said something hateful or just rude things that were just unnecessary, because it's part of the rhetoric, or, it's the trend right now, let's hate all law enforcement. I don't agree with that. I don't agree with jumping on that bandwagon. There are so many amazing police officers who are in that job because they're coming from a place of wanting to serve and give from their heart.
Right.
So to know that some of them, and I'm sure way more than I'm even aware of, because they don't always open up and share what's going on with them. But anyway, so my point is knowing that these things were happening and having interactions with different officers and getting to see them on a personal level, I just was feeling this nudge to like, okay, like, I could help them. Like, do they know about meditation? Like, do they know that, there are other things you can do so that you can still be good and not be taking all of your work home with you? And I mean, that's like that's a big thing all rolled up into that one statement. But I just like, do they like, that was a question that I had in my mind. Do they know that there are other things they can do so that they can find more inner peace if they're struggling with that? So my point is, the piece of adversity that I want to share here is that I was struggling with that and sort of leaking out in bits and pieces with, an officer here, a sergeant there. Hey, like just sharing this kind of information in different conversations I would have. And on the very last day that I was there, I was like just down to the last couple hours I was there. I walked over to the printer to get something, and I saw this one sergeant who was a very masculine sergeant, and very cool guy, but definitely not someone that I was like, well, I'm going to tell him about meditation. Definitely, he was not one of the ones I was thinking of sharing that with. And he somehow, I don't know exactly how, but he somehow heard that, oh, I do coaching on the side and, kind of incorporate metaphysical, spiritual, components into that. And he said, hey, Kim, I just heard, do you, and he like started to share, do you do like this coaching and blah, blah, blah. And I said, I freaked out. I was like, oh my gosh. And I was like, yes. And like, how did you find out? And he's like, oh, a little birdie told me, blah, blah. And then he started to share with me how that was so cool and how he's into some of that too. And I just was like, oh, you've got to be kidding me. For 3+ years, I have been trying to keep this part of myself at bay.
Right.
And, and like, you don't see this part of me. You're just supposed to see the crime analyst part of me.
Right.
Yeah.
And gosh, what it just makes you wonder what could have been different had I shared more of that side of me while I was there. And I believe things happen the way that they're supposed to happen. So it's like, okay, that was a really good learning moment for me. And it doesn't take away all that I learned when I was learning all these other things, with my emotions and energy and all that while I was there. But that was just such a good eye-opening moment for me to get that reaction from that kind of officer.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, that's That's awesome.
Yeah, no, that is
You can never judge
awesome.
a book by its cover. That's
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Yep.
you know, and you know, when you said, how did you know that? I was thinking, well, he's a police officer. Don't they find out about everything?
Yeah.
Yep.
But I was a crime analyst, so I felt like I was pretty good at like, you're
Yeah.
not going to see this part.
Right. Right.
Well, I think we're going to learn a little bit more about you, Kim, because I know Casey has a little fun lightning round that we don't tell our guests about beforehand. So, Casey, I'll turn it over to you.
Yes, Kim. Don't be alarmed. It's a lot of fun.
Okay. I'm ready.
Yeah,
I'm
but
ready.
it's just a few questions. It just kind of they're fun and they kind of get to know you a little bit better. So, first one, who is your favorite crime fighter of all time? It can be a human, animal, superhero, or a machine.
My goodness. Crime fighter of all time. Okay. Okay, well, I think my go-to's just got to be Wonder Woman because I think she's awesome.
Yes.
I think that's our first
We
Wonder
got a
Woman.
Wonder
isn't
Woman.
it?
Yes.
Good.
She's
You know what?
amazing.
Isn't she? Okay, sorry. This is lightning round. I'm not supposed to say anything else, huh?
No. You can go.
Go for it.
Okay, what I love about her is she's both fierce,
Yeah.
physically, mentally, and emotionally. Like
Yeah.
she's not closing that part off. She's recognizing the strength in that and using it to her benefit. So I love it.
I agree completely.
Yeah, just a quick note. My wife is a huge fan of Wonder Woman, and when I dragged her to go see the latest Avengers movie, yeah, she said, "Well, is Wonder Woman at least in it?" I says, "No, that's a different universe." And she was disappointed for the whole 3 hours. And anyhow,
She's adorable for that. That's very, very cute.
I had the same question, by the way.
Right.
Yeah.
All right. Number 2, best buddy cop movie or TV show.
I loved Chips when I was a kid.
That's great.
I'm going to go with it.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to Chips yet, so I like that.
Okay.
Number 3, what is your definition of a hero?
Oh, that's a really good question. Okay, I'm also just going to add on Lone Ranger to the previous question. Okay.
You can't stall on the questions that come up. It's like, well, if I throw in a Lone Ranger, I could have a little bit of time to think about the heavy hero question. Yeah.
That's great.
Okay, well, yeah, actually, so now that we did that, what was the question again about?
Your definition of a hero.
My definition of a hero is someone who, there's such a good question. My definition of a hero is someone who both can be a hero to themselves and understands the value in that, because that supports them and then being a hero to other people. I also think part of that is understanding that there's a balance between rescuing and providing someone the tools so that they can rescue themselves. So it's not always easy to discern, but someone who's able to support in that balanced kind of way, that's a hero.
I like it.
Yeah, me too.
Okay. Who would you say is your hero or the person you admire the most?
I would say, okay, well, I definitely love Oprah. She's awesome.
Oh, that's a good one.
Oprah.
Yeah,
I've been listening to her. Yeah, I've been listening to her podcasts. They're so uplifting. So I like that.
To me, she will never go out of style. So
yeah.
I'm going to leave it at that. I love Oprah.
Yeah.
She's just all around amazing. So
yeah, it's self-explanatory. Don't worry.
Thank you.
All right. So lastly, where can people find you if they want to take advantage of all that you have to offer? Social media, your website, what do you got?
Absolutely. So my website is KimO'NeillCoaching.com, and O'Neill is Oneill. They can also find me on Facebook at Kim O'Neill Coaching. I'm on Twitter at Kim's on a mission.
Nice.
And I have a YouTube channel. They can just search for Kim O'Neill Coaching and they'll find my channel there as well. Oh, and my show, we didn't talk about my show. My show is called Every Day is a New Day. Mm-hmm. And I'm making some shifts at the moment, but they can find access to that by one of the few resources I just said, my website, Facebook, or YouTube, and they can find out about future shows that way.
Nice. Well,
Awesome.
Thank you so much, Kim. You've been amazing.
Yeah, you're definitely
You
on a
too,
mission. Thank you for being on our show.
I know.
Thank you for having me on your show. Ken, you are just so awesome. I love your energy, and I love that you have this show for first responders and, just helping them to have a bigger voice and supporting them. So what you guys are doing, I think, is really exciting. So kudos to Ken and Casey.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, Kim.
Ken is definitely the mastermind, and he does so much work to make it great. So I concur. He's got great energy. So
wow, I'm getting all this love today. We're definitely airing this show.
Mission accomplished.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, Kim, for being on our show, and Casey, I'll turn it over to you so you can tell everybody how they can find us.
For sure. Well, thank you everyone for listening. Kim, you were great. Thank you again. And be sure to share this podcast, rate it on iTunes, Google Play, Stitcher, anywhere you can find podcasts. We're there. If you have any questions or comments that you'd like us to cover, or a guest that you think would be a great feature for the podcast, send me an email at ksmith@nationalpolicecu.com. You guys all have a great week and stay safe out there.
Thank you, folks.